For materials, I used newspaper to make my pattern, a Finnis foil monofin, my Singer sewing machine with matching thread and bobbin, 3 kinds of fabric, the top 2 which I'll explain later, tape, a tape measure, paper, sewing pins, scissors, a pencil, and a permanent marker. First, I grabbed my paper and made a simple diagram with spots to put in my measurements. I measured my waist, my hips, my knees, my calves, and my ankles. Then I measured from my waist to my hips, my waist to my knees, my waist to my calves, and my waist to my ankles. After you fill those in, you can continue to making your pattern. To make your pattern, you will need your newspaper and your tape, and I forgot to put it in the shot, but you'll also need your pen and your measuring tape. Tape the newspaper together for the length of your tail. To make the step 10 times easier, make sure that the center fold of the newspapers are in one line. Divide each measurement by 2. Make sure to center them on the fold of the paper so they're even. To make this easier, divide instead by 4 and then make your lines on either side of the fold, combining to make a line half of your measurement that is evenly divided by the fold. Don't forget to measure your lengthwise measurements as well, so your tail is not oddly proportioned. Your knees don't go under your hips, and your ankles don't rest directly under your knees. After you're finished plotting your measurements, connect the edges of your lines. Remember not to make them sharp. Make them curve in as much of a natural pattern as you can. Now take your monofin and position it onto your paper where your ankles would rest. Trace your fin to get an idea of how big your fluke needs to be. Starting about a centimeter away from your traced fin line, create the pattern for your fluke. I needed 1 extra bit of newspaper for mine. Make sure that where the 2 end fluke pieces meet back at the bottom of your fin, there is at least 1 inch of extra room. This is so your fabric won't be too tight around your fin and will also look better. You can now start to cut your pattern out. I stopped at the bottom because I'm going to show you how to make sure that the fluke is symmetrical. To make sure it's symmetrical, fold the entire pattern over so you can still see your outline of the first half of the fluke you made. Pin it down if you want or trace it again, and then cut. Your pattern is now done. You can set it aside and grab your fabric. Fold your fabric in half lengthwise with the shiny side or side you want to show inside. Lay it down and smooth as many wrinkles as you can out of it. Lay your pattern on your fabric. It's advised you pin it down for easier tracing. Tracing first made my cutting way easier. Here you can see my fully pinned pattern on my fabric. After I finished tracing my pattern onto my fabric, I repinned it so when I cut it, it would stay even. Just as a reminder to myself, I added a dotted line about 1 inch, no less than a ½ inch, away from my line. The dotted line is where I'll be cutting. If you cut on the solid line, your tail may be too tight after you sew it up. Leave a generous amount of fabric at the waist. Even though you measured, there's no guarantee it'll be perfect. And as everyone says, it's better to have extra that you can trim than too little and you have to improvise or at worst start all over. This is what my tail looks like after I'm done cutting it out. Here you see the green fabric that I used for my tail cover. I won't go too much into this because even I don't know what I did. It was all just trial and error. The pink fabric was used as an attempt to cover the shape of the fin when the tail got wet. For the pink fin cover, all I did was trace the fluke, cut out the fabric, sew it and turn it, as you can see in the next couple of photos. The fluke cover was definitely more complicated, so like I said, I won't really go into it. You'll just have to guess from the pictures. It involved a lot of upside down and backwardsness that my poor brain can't even begin to remember. Everyone else can sew their cutout tails and turn them. Hem the waist and you're done. Even though yours probably won't have the sparkly fabric, you can still watch this part because it's when I sew the tail together and turn it. Put your pins in to make sure everything stays even and then begin. Use a zigzag stitch so it can stretch like a swimsuit would and to prevent ripped seams. This is my tail about 90% finished. I added a waistband on mine after, with a matching glittery cover, but the seams were really ugly, so I didn't even add it in the video. Here is the only shot I have of me in the tail. I'm at the Hilton Waikoloa Village in Kona. The first use of it, the color faded and the heels and butt started to rub off. I washed it, and it lost almost all of its color. Not a bad design, but a really bad fabric. Fin has also since been sold. One more problem that was design related was the drag in the water, but opening the seams in the bottom of the fluke bit should help that. Thank you for watching.